Hello and welcome. Today's something a little bit different than what you might be used to on this channel. Today I'm going to be looking over some Hearthstone stuff. We've got the mini set coming out, and so I kind of wanted to look over some of the new cards, show off some builds that I had for the interesting classes at least, and just give my thoughts on everything coming out in this Hearthstone mini set. If you're from Marvel Snap, then you're welcome to check this out. If you're not interested, then that's fine by me. Uh, but I don't intend to have only Marvel Snap content on my channel, so I figured this would be pretty fun. And let's just get started. Mining casualties. So I'm not going to read the card. I hope that you know what the card does. But it's the Death Knight and Paladin dual class card, and it seems really good. You get two 1/1s, and then you summon two the Frail Ghouls, so they're little chargers from the Death Knight token, right? And this is really good. There's a whole lot of synergies involved with the card too, and it's just really sticky, right? Because like your opponent doesn't want to hit into them, and so then there's so like just looking at Death Knight right now, right? So you play this. Not only is it corpses, right? But um, so yeah, you play your crop rotation, your mining casualties, and then on turn four you're on eight corpses, right? Like your corpse bride on turn five is going to be fully juiced if you go mining casualties and the crop rotation, just as an example, right? Um, what is really cool about it in Death Knight is that if you go to standard cards, you have a Sickly Grimewalker and Acolyte of Death, right, as follow-ups. Because keep in mind, it's gonna be the Silverhand recruits, and then if you trade those in, then you'll immediately get the Rush Undeads, right? And so then the cool part with that is that you can then go Acolyte of Death. So that's after a friendly undead dies, draw a card. So you trade your 1/1s in, and then you trade your new 1/1 undead rushers in, and you basically get a 3 mana 3/4 draw two as a baseline, right? And then you can follow it up with whatever, which is really cool. Like the dream curve, I guess, would be mining casualties, acolyte of death, and then on turn four you could go, Nerubian Swarm Guard, or more interestingly, Tomb Guardians if you want to do a two unholy one frost deck. I've always been a really big fan of acolyte of death. You can also do Sickly Grimewalker. So beforehand, the cool thing to do was Sickly Grimewalker and then crop rotation, and so this actually curves, mining casualties into Sickly Grandwalker and protects your Grandwalker on three. So a lot of really interesting stuff to do with it, on top of all this, corpse farming stuff. So really cool card. Seems really solid, and I feel like it's just a staple in every deck. Granted, I said that for crop rotation, so we'll have to see, but it seems like a really powerful card to look forward to. Now, let me kind of see if I can find, because there's no real filter to find all the new cards. They didn't bother posting them anywhere, surprisingly. But we got that. We got prosthetic hand. I looked through the undeads. The only really interesting thing to reborn is like Reska. Um, I don't, I don't think there's anything else that's really interesting to give reborn. There's like the plague, 2 mana 3/2 that shovels two plagues into their deck. It can be kind of like a nice follow up on turn two that, and then if they don't kill it, then you play your hand on it and it gets reborn, so you get to shuffle four plagues into their deck. But I don't think it's still that good. Even that isn't that appealing. It's only really good with Reska, and then that's like really specific still, because then they need to have like a full board of stuff that you want to, trade into and steal. So I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think this card's really good at all. And when we talk about Paladin, I don't think it's going to be good in Paladin either. And then Quartzite Crusher seems pretty solid. It's just Craftsman's Hammer, except it heals instead of giving you armor, and in return it gives you this kind of freeze effect. So seems fine. I don't think it's great by any means. It's only going to go in Rainbow, and in Rainbow, I don't even know if it's great in Rainbow, honestly. it's not terrible. It just doesn't really fit with the idea of the deck. We probably still jam it though. It's not bad. And it's kind of nice off that the 1 mana card that discovers a weapon, and then if you have three corpses, then it spends them and gives your weapon +1/+1. It's a really good discover off that. Just as a side note, but seems fine in Rainbow. Nothing crazy though. And then we've got Mismatched Fossils, which is the Hunter paired, and I think this is terrible. It's a 3 mana discover a beast and an undead, swap their stats. Seems pretty trash. Uh, I don't know why I would spend 3 mana on that. There's a whole lot of whiffs. Obsidian Revenant, a lot of stats, but I look at Savannah Highmane, I look at all these other stuff, and I can't even guarantee that I'm gonna get like a 3 cost Death Rattle off the Death Rattle, right? Like I could literally just get a 1 mana Death Rattle, and then this is absolute garbage. So really slow. I don't believe in it at all. So Death Knight overall, this is pretty. Quartzite Crusher is sort of nice for Rainbow. Mining Casualties is really good, but not enough to where I'm really wanting to make a deck for you guys. So, you guys will see later that I had some cooks made, but some classes I just had to pass. Death Knight was one of them. Sorry about that. I figured, Mining Casualties being the only really interesting card for me, isn't enough for me to make a deck. So, moving on, DH. I think DH got the worst set. It's really boring. Shadestone Skulker, you can eat a weapon, but there's no real weapons that you want to eat. Like you can eat your Glaive Tar, but that's kind of late and it's terrible earlier. It's unplayable earlier, I should say. And like maybe you still want to swing with the weapon, but the Skulker lived, so now you gotta wait till the Skulker dies till you can swing your weapon. So that's really awkward. The only kind of saving grace that I see for it is that it's a rush. So you can play rush the stage, and then this will cost 0, which is kind of cool. But other than that, it just seems pretty mediocre. I don't really get what I'm supposed to be doing with this card. Um, moving on, Fell Fissure. This one's kind of weird. I don't know. 2 damage to all minions. Starting your next turn, deal 2 more damage to all minions. I don't I don't think this is good. Maybe it's like Reno filler, but even then, Reno DH is so terrible. Uh, maybe it's in like big DH, but big DH is about to rotate and it's not even that good. I don't even think this card is great. It's so slow, right? Why is it all minions? It could have been your only enemies. It could have been hit their face too, but it doesn't do any of that. So I don't love the card at all. Quick pick. This is probably the only good card that DH got. But there's not really much to talk about. It's just 2 mana, draw 2 over 2 turns, and deal damage both turns. It's neat. Not much to talk about with it. Burning Heart. At first, I was thinking that maybe you can play this in Naga DH, but I feel like there's better options. Uh, and this is kind of only playable when you're doing the pop off. And like the minion has to live, and then you get 3 attack, and it's like Slam is unplayable, and that draws a card. So I don't really love this at all. So it's a pass for me in DH. And then last card, Crimson Expanse, 4 mana weapon that you choose a damaged minion and then you summon a dormant copy, which sounds really, really slow. And the issue with Big DH, which is the only deck that this would work in, the only like relatively big minion that you can guarantee being injured is a green rag, Elitaria Inquisitor. And so even then, this is so slow for that. So I just don't dig it. I don't like it at all. So DH just got a full lift set, I think. Moving on to Druid. Druid got an absolutely insane set. Starting with Gem Tosser. It's just it's just a bit easier. Astalor. I do want to say I really love the design that it's a finale, so you can't be bouncing it, and it's not stupid with that. So I love that design. Seems easy to just fill into your mana. So and then it becomes a Mask of Cthulhu or whatever. It hits the opponent, and it's really cool that you can spend that extra 7 mana or whatever mana you have on that turn to clear the board, and then you play your Trog Gem Tosser, and then it hits them in the face. So it's a really cool card. Gloomstone Guardian, I don't think this is great for Druid, but it is kind of interesting to go a different route with the Reno Druid, with Ignis. You right now they're doing Embrace Nature. So this is not good with Embrace Nature, I should say. Um, but it has some pretty cool, flexibility in that you can kind of just tempo it sometimes. And it's a different way to go about Ignis in a Highlander that seems pretty interesting. So that's something that I ended up building later on. You'll see. Now this card, I think this might be the best card of the mini set. It's it's so insane. So basically, it's Overgrowth, but better in that it goes absolutely insane later in the game. It's like a mana thirst card, if anything, right? So mana thirst 10 basically, you summon 3/7 taunts, and it's even crazier with Solar Eclipse. So I think this is really good, and it really allows you to kind of plan around getting to ENR really early too. As you'll see later, there's another card that works really well with ENR, so this just kind of gets you there faster. It's really insane. Like there's such a good direction with this mini set. These three cards just have a great direction for Druid. Pendant of Earth, so discover a minion from your deck, gain armor equals to its cost. It's a nature spell, which is really nice for Topior. And so what you can do is first off you can discover Crypt Lord. So or Crypt Keeper, I think it's Crypt Keeper. It's the 4/6 taunt that costs one less for each armor you have. So, you get eight, you basically have a 3 mana gain 8 armor, summon a 4/6 taunt. Sounds really good. And then if you have the other Crypt Keeper in your hand, then that's also free. Really, really good. You can discover Naga Giant with this, which is a little dumb. Um, this is basically 3 mana gain 20, and then, if that Naga Giant is free, then you also get an 8/8. So really, really good. ENR2, any kind of combo that you want to do, this is a tutor for that kind of stuff. So just this is gonna get nerfed. This is gonna be so annoying. I hate this card. Because I can think of so many broken things to do with it. And this card too. Uh, you choose a minion, 5 mana. You basically do that Sathrvar effect where you add a copy to your hand deck and battlefield. And so not only can you do your own stuff, you can do your opponent's stuff as well. So if they have a Colossal or a Titan, you can copy that. They play Aman'Thul, and then you get your own Aman'Thul. Uh, Pretty crazy. Um, and so what you hit on your own is anything with a cost discount you hit with the Shattered Reflection. So ENR, mana for refresh it, and then you basically get another ENR, and then the next turn you have another ENR to refill. It's really gross. And then Phi, you get a 0 mana 4/12 taunt on the board. Then you copy it, and then you add a copy to your hand to play again, and then every once in a while you'll draw into another Phi. Really gross. Um, what was the other one? There's some other cards that are just insane. The Naga Giant, right? So you play your Naga Giant, you play this, and you basically get 3/8/8s on that turn, and then you have one more in the deck, right? So it's gas. It's so much gas. There's so many opportunities to abuse this card. So it seems really good in Druid. Surprisingly, it's when we talk about Priest later, it's not as good in Priest. So uh, let's move on to Hunter though. Shimmer Shot, really love this card. Just last hurrah for Arcane Hunter. Um, Seems solid. I love 1 mana cards. It's drawn off Trinket Tracker, so really cool card. Looking forward to it. Let's see what else did they. Oh yeah, this is a that's kind of sad one. Elemental Companion. So this card kind of sucks. Basically you get Hifar, which is 3 mana 4/2. Your spells cost one less. Luvak is 2/4, spell damage plus 2. and Misho, which is 4/4 and can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. And this is really bad to play on three, because if you don't get Misho and you get one of these, the 4/2, your spells cost one less, and the 2/4, the spell damage +2. You can't really abuse those on turn three, so you can't. And then Misho is only good on turn three, really. So it's just so weird. Like the card really wants this card. Like it would be good if you knew which companion you were gonna get. Like if this was like a remix thing where like each turn you would know what you were getting and they would swap each turn, I think this would be a lot better. But as is, like you just can't plan. Because, say I have a handful of spells, I'm really looking forward to getting discounts. Then oops, I got Misho. Or like, man, I have all these like spell damage stuff, but it's like, oops, I got Misho. Or I have a handful of cheap spells in generation, but none of them deal damage, so the spell damage is useless. Right? So it's just really awkward. I don't think it's good at all. Especially with what we have. If you could guarantee one of them, then this would be really good, honestly. But as is, it seems bad. Mantle Shaper, really cool card. 5 mana 5/5 that can go down to 0. It's always good. Um, but just I don't see it. It's pretty cool with Star Shooter and with Bananas. I think those two were kind of standout cards with it, and Barrel of Monkeys, obviously. But I just don't love it. I don't know. It just feels like it wants to go in a deck that has a lot more draw, which Hunter and Mage don't really have access to. See, Hunter has all the cheap spells, but it doesn't have a ton of draw. And then Mage has all the draw, but they don't really have any cheap spells, surprisingly. Um, Now, this is another card where it's like if you could guarantee the Hifar, making your spells cost one less, then you have bananas in hand, Mantle Shaper goes down to 0. This would be a really cool kind of idea. But as is, you have no idea. You could just roll a Misho or spell damage, and then bam, your Mantle Shaper gets delayed like 3 turns. It's just so much work. It sits in your hand for a while. I just don't think it'll work out. But I do have a deck with it to show later on. Now, Mage got another. Somehow the regular set was terrible. I guess the excavates were okay. Somehow the regular set was, mediocre, and then their mini set was even worse. They got Summoning Ward, which is a terrible secret. You're never gonna play it. I don't even want to talk about it. Uh, and they got what did they get? They got Soul Freeze, which is really good at least. So this card is really annoying because it's gonna get Sif nerfed for sure. Um, Basically Flurry. So, Mage is always kind of missing Flurry. That's kind of the reasons why Savara fell off, was that you always wanted to copy spells, and so you would copy at least one Flurry most of the time just to be able to replay it. And so now you can have Soul Freeze and you can replay it multiple times with like rewind and do some obnoxious stuff. So I expect this card to get nerfed because it's 1 mana Frost Nova, so that's really stupid. And it's a frost spell for your rainbow stuff, so if you don't draw your cold case, then it's a really good frost spell for you, especially after rotation. So this is either this, Frostworm 3. Like, you just freeze their 3 biggest minions, you play a big chonker, and then they can't deal with it unless they have some from hand removal. Um, Mantle Shaper and Elemental Companion, like I said, I don't think that they're what the heck? My bad. I don't know what that was. Mantle Shaper and Elemental Companion, like I said, there's just no cheap spells in Mage, and you can't guarantee that you're getting the discount or the spell damage, so I don't love it. Plus, for spell damage, you already have Sif, so there's no point. Um, Chaos Creation, seems really out of place for Mage. I don't see why you would need it at all for Mage when you have Fireland's Portal and Fireland's Portal is terrible. So, and you don't want to, this is why one of the few classes where you actually do care about destroying the bottom cards of your deck because you don't want to lose Sif. Uh, so it just seems like it doesn't even make sense it being, dual class. Does that make sense? Um, Going to Paladin, some really, really cool cards in Paladin. The Excavate package all seems really great. Uh, this is gonna this is gonna cause some issues. So Shroomscavate, you get Wind Fury and Divine Shield, and you excavate a treasure for 3 mana. Luckily, it has no spell tag, but what you do basically is there's three options really. So you play it for the excavate. That's one option. The second option is you play something like Anachronos, or you play Reno, and then you play a minion, something like that, right? And you basically have a big minion stick. So whether that be Anachronos, that's an easy one. You play your Anachronos, your opponent's board is gone, and if they don't have like a rusher from hand removal, then that Anachronos is going to stick a lot of the time, right? And then you just give it Wind Fury, which is really dumb. What else you can do is um, you can really, really abuse Garden's Grace. So basically, any Garden's Grace, every once in a while you see like an 11 attack Silverhand Recruit. Well, now you can give that 11 attack Silverhand Recruit Wind Fury. So it seems really, 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 really scary. Um, and it's funny because it looks better in a Garden's Grace deck than an actual Excavate deck. Uh, and I'm sure that there's going to be some kind of Excavate, maybe holy hybrid thing. If not, you just toss this into old Holy Paladin. I'm sure that this card's gonna, make waves there. And then we get Finley too, which is an insane payoff. It's just a mass polymorph for your opponent, and you get a 2/3, and it's only to your opponent if you've excavated twice. So it seems really, really good to stay ahead on board, right? And that's another way of, you know, you have a minion on board, they play a minion, you Finley them, you hit their face. They can't really deal with it. You Shroomscavate, you Wind Fury, you hit their face twice. It just feels really snowbally. Um, Fossilized Kaleidosaur, 4 mana, 3/4, gain 2 random bonus effects, Excavated Treasure. Seems pretty solid. Sometimes you can get some crappy bonus effects, but sometimes you get Wind Fury and Stealth or something, and you buff it up, and it's kind of scary. Really good meme, amazing flavor. Probably my favorite card of the set, flavor wise, in that it references the Galvadon song in the flavor text. So really cool flavor. Um, Moving on. Oh, and uh, I should talk about the dual class card that I got with Death Knight. I don't know why it's not showing again. Mining Casualties. So mining casual. Forget about prosthetic hand. Just pretend you didn't see it. There's no mech worth discount reborning. But mining casualties is really good in Paladin. It's especially good with Deputization Aura, right? Because you basically, if they don't clear it, then you get a 3 attack, then a 3 attack rusher, then a 3 attack, then another 3 attack rusher, and that's just on curve, right? So really, really good card. As well as just Silverhand Recruit kind of things. You have your the 3 mana 3/4 that gives you recruits attack and taunt. Seems like a really good curve to defend that. It just somehow synergizes with everything. It's a really surefire way of making sure that you get a buff up, and then a lot of the times, you can make a trade, and then you can buff up the charger to hit their face. There's a lot of things you can do. Easy way of guaranteeing you get an excavate on 3. Although the buff, giving a 1/1 Wind Fury and Divine Shield isn't great, but you guarantee that you get an excavate on 3, so that's not bad. Um, and then moving on, let's go to Priest. So Priest got some kind of lame cards, honestly. Nothing too interesting. Hidden Gem. It's pretty cool for overheal. I don't I don't know how great it's gonna be in overheal because it's only an end of turn effect. Um, so like you have your Crimson Clergy and you don't even get to draw until the end of the turn. Um, your opponent plays an AoE and it dies, but it's pretty nice to set up like an injured bowler, uh, Hedanus stuff. It's not terrible. I kind of like the design. I don't know why it's dual class, to give it stealth, but it doesn't really make sense. I don't know. Um, then Glowstone Gyreworm. This one's pretty cool. Just maybe just for Highlander Priest, really, to give them a different, better Forge card for Ignis. Seems I don't know, seems fine. Nothing to write home about, but Forge cards all get kind of a preemptive nerf uh, to being good just because of Ignis, the Ignis tax, I should say. Shadowward Steel seems really, really mid. 5 years ago, this would have been insane compared to Entomb, but I don't ever see myself playing this when I have Cannibalize instead as an option. I'm sure that you're going to see a lot of random Renathal decks playing this, and it's going to be terrible, but it's going to tilt you still. Pendant of Earth, definitely not as good as it is in Priest as it is in Druid, but it's pretty neat in Highlander just because you can tutor out your payoffs, your elemental, you can tutor out your Elise. So that's kind of nice at least. Nothing crazy, but definitely an include in Highlander. And then not potent. Shattered Reflections. So I don't even know if you want to play this in Priest. Maybe it's in Highlander just because you can also hit your opponent stuff. But there's just not much cost reduction like Phi or ENR and stuff that you're able to copy on your own, unless something sticks, right? The only thing I could really think of was Thirsty Drifter, but even then, that's not really insane. You're basically paying 5 mana for 2/4/6 taunts, so it's okay. But there's not even really anything else in that deck that you want to copy, that you can copy reliably, I should say. So I'm not a huge fan of it in Priest, but maybe Highlander Priest ends up running it. Who knows? And then on to Rogue. Another whiff set. Fool's Gold is terrible. Don't run it. Maybe there might be a nerf to Velarock where he makes you play two cards, but even then, I don't think Fool's Gold is worth it. I should note that for the pirate, there's only really the warrior pirates. So they aren't terrible, but they also aren't great, and I don't want to pay 1 extra mana for that. So I'm still not playing it, but just worth noting. Um, and then well, I guess the dual classes were already mentioned. So yeah, Shadowward Steel terrible. Please don't play it. It's it's way worse in Rogue than it is as Priest, and I'm not playing it as Priest. So Hidden Gem kind of neat for like the Menagerie Rogue. It lets your Velarock trade and then you heal it, so it's kind of neat, but it's probably bad. It's probably bad. And then what was the other dual class for? Oh, it was Demon Hunter. Yeah, never mind. So Quick Pick, really cool card for Rogue as well. Um, Nothing else. And then Shadestone Skulker seems pretty neat for a weapon rogue if they ever finally support it and give them a weapon. But they still don't have a weapon. They have all the weapon buffs, but no weapon still. So maybe something to look out for next year. For next year would actually be pretty interesting. You have this huge weapon. You play the big rusher that takes your weapon, and then it kills the taunt, and then you're able to swing. So pretty interesting to look something to look forward to next year for Rogue if they ever print them an actual weapon that they can buff. Uh, and then Shaman. Shaman got another really cool set. So the same Shrimpskivate, and so Shrimpskivate is really cool with Golganeth because the way that Windfury works with Colossals, or not Colossals, Titans, is that they basically get to use two abilities, and Golganeth's passive already lets you basically on turn 6 you can do two Golganeth abilities, and give him Divine Shield. So it seems really good, really, really good. And so I can't tell if Shroomskavate is more overpowered in Shaman or Paladin. They got Needle Rock Totem. Seems like nice filler for Highlander. It finally gives you like something to draw off of Trusty Companion. Um, because a lot of times you have like a random totem and you don't want to buff it because you don't draw anything off of it. So this is really nice to actually have something to draw off of it in Highlander. Digging straight down, 4 mana, deal 8, 2 minion, excavated treasure. Uh, it's pretty mediocre. It's kind of like the Burrow Buster of the class. Um, yeah, I don't know how good Excavate is going to be in Shaman because Finley is so insanely broken, but you're also stuck with this, and the Excavate treasure isn't great. Um, yeah, I guess I should talk about the Excavate treasure. I'll talk about it at the end. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Shaman, honestly. And then Aftershocks, really good card, honestly. Deal 1 damage to all minions 3 times. Cost 2 less if you cast a spell last turn. So, you look at Torrent, that would be deal 8 for 1 mana. He has 2 mana, deal 3 to all. So, I think it's pretty good. Just, if you can do some kind of spell damage thing, there's not really a great way of abusing this with spell damage, just because your spell damage minion will also die. Uh, so, still a great removal, something that I look forward to using. Uh, I don't know about Highlander just 'cause it's really weird because you have to make sure that you have a lot of spells in your deck that you're just incidentally playing. But something to look forward to. It's something that should be pretty good. Warlock, I think Warlock got a really interesting set. They got Geode, which is Kobold Librarian, but 1 extra mana, and you get another card as the Death Rattle. So it seems pretty good. Um, and kind of plays into that fatigue package that they already have. And then they were dual classed with Druid and Mage. Let me scroll back up so you can see them again. And so then for Druid, it's with the Gem Tosser. So Gem Tosser doesn't really seem as good in Warlock for me, just because they don't ramp as much. Now it is kind of interesting because you can pressure your opponent's life total, and they have more clears. So like maybe you can play a deck with sacrifices, and what was it? Sacrificial Pact? I don't know. The 1 mana kill your own thing, kill your opponent's thing, and defile and stuff, and then you clear the board and you play your Trog, and then your crescendo. It's a good follow up after a crescendo, stuff like that. So maybe it's a nice way to pressuring your opponent's life total, but I would expect Trog to be a little bit better in Druid. Um, and then the other card was the Gloomstone Guardian. So really good follow up on Forge of Wills. So you 3 mana, and then turn 4 you have a 6/8 taunt and a 6/8 rush, and then maybe you forged on 2 as well. So there's no issues there. So it seems like a really good curve, and it adds some consistency to the sludge deck that's already running the 7/7 as well. So it seems really good for that. And then here's where it gets juicy. Soul Freeze. Soul Freeze is insane for Warlock. It might be better for Warlock than it is for Mage. Just, Freeze is so good for them to be able to keep their life total. And it kind of just makes Warlock so much better. Um, right, so what you can do is, um, not only does this kind of like let you wait for your Sargeras, a Gigafin, for defiled turns, crescendo turns. Um, but it also lets you kind of hit your opponent in the face, right? So, say you do this Forge of Will turn, your opponent plays all these minions to try and develop and try to trade the next turn, and then you just soul freeze them and hit their face again, right? And it's kind of like a Frostfirm's Fury in that way, in that you just freeze their stuff and you don't worry about it and you hit their face, and then maybe you have another one later on, uh, and as well as just being a stall tool as well. Um, Another cool thing that you can do is you can play the 5/5 that becomes 0 if you damage yourself. And so this damages yourself as well. So it seems pretty good. You play Soul Freeze on the 5/5 the same turn, and then you just made your own Froststorm's Fury. Seems really good. Chaos Creation. I wasn't as huge on this one in Warlock until I remembered that you have Fuel the Fire. Was it Fuel the Flames? Whatever it's called. Furnace Fuel. And so a lot of the times it might just draw two cards incidentally. So it could be pretty interesting if you want to do a fatigue package. That's something that I'm going to talk about later, so I won't spoil too much of it, but it seems pretty interesting for it. And then lastly, maybe one of the most interesting classes with their legendary is Warrior. And Bran opens up a lot of directions for Warrior to kind of, I guess, reevaluate all the cards that they have. And so I won't spoil too much because I do have two decks built for them later to show. But just such a powerful, huge, huge, huge battle cry. Um, that's probably the most impactful out of all the Highlander legendaries. Now that is kind of accommodated by the fact that it's a 6 mana 2/4, but there's a bunch of 7 mana follow ups with battle cry to kind of help you stabilize. So let's just go on. Oh, I forgot to take my neutrals real quick, actually. Um, yeah, let me just do the neutrals real quick. Nothing really too interesting. Shell Spider, Elemental deck still suck, but this is fine filler for it. When that happens, no, I press play now again. Gyre Worms sucks. Uh, Stone Drake seems like a good follow up if you can hand buff. Therazane seems really terrible compared to Lorthamar. I don't know why they made it so terrible. Marut seems like a pretty mediocre payoff for Highlander, but it's something at least. And sometimes you get a rag, so it's gonna be really high rolly. I look forward to using it. um, but yeah, let's go to the cooks. Um, and yeah, so Druid. I think Druid's the biggest winner of the mini set, honestly. And that's just because 3 mana gain 20 armor is really insane. And Naga Giant really, really, really appreciates all the new cards. So Pendant of Earth, Shattered Reflection, Crystal Cluster, all really good with Naga Giant. And Solar Eclipse is just such a good card in this deck. You go Solar Frost Lotus Seeding, Solar Pendant, Solar Shattered Reflection, Solar Crystal. Turn 10, use Solar Crystal, and you have 6/3/7 taunts. Solar Miracle Growth. There's so many options. ENR really enables it as well. Topior, just, so many nature spell. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 along with the Planted Evidence discovers. So a lot of summons for Topior. And the fact that, in a slower matchup, you can Topior and Shattered Reflections the Topior, and then, maybe later on in the game, you draw your other Topior, and now all of a sudden, every single nature spell you play gives you three, gives you three whelps. So pretty, pretty, pretty insane. Trog Gem Tosser is another way of kind of killing your opponent. I don't even know. I just kind of tossed it in. It doesn't even really fit, but you just do a lot of stuff, and then you just kind of semi-clear the board and hit them in the face with Gem Tosser, and it seems really good. Crypt Keeper just seems really good with the Pendant of Earth, like I said, and Frost Lotus Seeding as well. So should be a really good shoe-in. I I just think that this is going to be the best deck once the expansion releases. I was talking with some people that were kind of giving me ideas of Yogg, so Yogg could be really good in here as well. I wouldn't be surprised by that. And Seedsman versus Wild Growth is something to debate. I wouldn't, be opposed. I just like going Seedsman into Cluster on curve. Seems like a nice idea for me. Then Highlander Druid. So this one I'm not as excited about. I just kind of got excited by Gloomstone Guardian and kind of being able to do an Ignis route. without using Embrace Nature. So as you see, we don't have Nourish because we have Crystal Cluster and because we're cutting the Embrace of Nature. So should be pretty interesting. Marut seems like it actually kind of makes sense in this since you have the extra mana to play those extra elementals. And Gem Tosser should be a nice shoe in here as well. But yeah, nothing too interesting. Like I said, Shadow Deflection, Pen and Divert, they're really good. But I think that the Naga Giant deck is going to be the real standout. Going into Hunter, I just wanted to kind of get an idea of what a Mantle Shaper deck would look like. You just play a bunch of bananas and a bunch of spells. And Star Shooter and Miracle Salesman works really well with it as well. It's just essentially a free discount on your Mantle Shaper whenever you draw it, which is really cool. I love Miracle Salesman. And I was thinking, maybe if Star Shooter sucks still as a 4 mana 2/3, you can look at Jungle Jammer. And so Jungle Jammer seems pretty interesting in this deck as well. You got your bananas, your snake oil, and all of a sudden you got a pretty big beast coming off of that Jungle Jammer. So kind of pretty interesting. If you don't want to run Star Shooter, I wouldn't be surprised, and I would be really willing to try Jungle Jammer. Then going into Paladin, Excavate. So I just kind of put a lot of powerful cards into one deck. I really like the idea of mining casualties into Deputization Aura just to completely clear the board before going into turn 4. Um, which seems really strong. Uh, so I think that should be really exciting to do. I didn't bother posting a Garden's Grace deck because I didn't want to unleash that onto the world, but that should also be very scary. Shrimpscavate, I forgot to mention, is also a really good follow-up after Keeper Strength. You're likely to have that Mystic on the board. Um, so it's just so many powerful cards that you can fit into this. Really looking forward to seeing how Showdown can if Showdown can come back, or if you want to do Earthens as well. There was an Earthen build that I didn't bother doing, but you could do. I just think that your core really is just going to be that Anachronos, Keeper Strength, working really well with the Trimscavate, and I'm very sure that the Garden's Grace deck is going to come back with Trimscavate as well. Then going on to Shaman, I wanted to do a duplicate deck because I really like the idea of Clownfish with Finley. You play your Clownfish, you play your Gorlock, and then you go into Finley. You're able to tutor your Finley. You're able to discount your Azurite Murloc, and then a lot of these cards really enjoy getting evolved. Pretend you play your Clownfish, and then the next turn you play your Gorlock and your Azurite Murloc, and then all of a sudden your Gorlock got evolved as well, right? So a lot of really interesting stuff. I like Trusty Companion a lot because you can play it onto your Shockcropper, draw your Glug, your Backstage Bouncer. Um, One card I was considering was Amalgam of the Deep. So any card that you don't like, if you don't want to run Command and Epsilon, uh, then feel free to cut it for Amalgam of the Deep. Um, and then that's a totem that you can draw for Trusty Companion as well. So just a little extra thing. I just kind of wanted to keep my Murlocs down because I wanted to draw Finley and Rockgill as often as I could off of Warlock. So that's just a personal thing. If you don't like Command and Epsilon, I get it. It's not really great with Cactus Cutter. I just like it because I've always thought it's a good card, and Golganeth works pretty well with it. So I personally love that card, but if you want to cut it, I don't mind it. Um, then Highlander Shaman. So I'm not as big on Highlander Shaman using the Excavate package, but I just wanted to build it for the fun of it. And so Marut seems like a nice, pretty cool card. Aftershock seems really good for the deck. And what I'm really excited, and Finley as well, obviously. And what I wanted to do, I wasn't able to figure it out, but I think conductivity could be really cool as some kind of different build of it. If you have altered chord, so maybe you have some overload cards, and then altered chord as well as Shroomscavate and digging straight down. All those cards work really well. Your cold storage. I'm running Jive Insect for the fun of it, but if you run conductivity, then giant Jive Insect because all of a sudden become a really interesting actual inclusion once you're able to set it up with carving chisel and stuff like that. So really interesting. Yeah, if anything, I wish I was able to show off a conductivity deck, but I wasn't able to figure it out to where it made sense. Just because overload cards are kind of weird to figure out, and I really wanted altered chord in that deck. So if I figure it out, then I'll let you guys know. But for now, this is what I've got. And then I'm really excited for this deck. This might, I think, between Druid and Warlock, those are the two classes that I'm most excited for. Surprisingly, you would think that the Excavate and Reno classes are the ones that I'm excited for, but no. I'm really excited for Fatigue Warlock. And so what you get to do is, you get to draw through your deck very quickly. You get your Forge of Wills into Waste Remover or Gloomstone Guardian, and you abuse Loken to get this 15/15, a 7/7, a 6/8, and then you go into late game with the Poopgar, Popgar, but I like calling him Poopgar. Crescendo is a nice late game, and then Soul Freeze, like I was saying earlier, you play a big chonker and you Soul Freeze their minions, and then all of a sudden, what are they gonna do, right? Uh, Now, the one thing that I wasn't sure about is whether you want to run Sargeras, Gigafin in this deck. They work really well with Soul Freeze, but you are kind of churning through your deck as fast as possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make the cut and something else is supposed to come out of this list. But I'm really excited for this deck. Like I said, you go to the end of your deck, you play your Chaos Creation, all your milling cards to get a Fanatim really quickly. And then you play Symphony of Sins while you're in fatigue, so where you're only drawing those 3 mana powerful spells. So I'm really excited for this deck. I think it should be fun, and there's a lot of improvements to be made, I'm sure. But this is just what I'm excited to try out first. I do think one last thing, Fellstring Heart just really really powerful in this kind of deck to help protect you. Don't run this deck without that card. And then in our last class, Warrior. So I had two different builds of Warrior. I wanted to do Excavate. So normally I wouldn't be a huge fan of Excavate in a singleton deck, but because Bran lets you double up on Excavates, then it kind of offsets. And so the really cool thing is that with ETC becomes really powerful after a Bran, um, because you're able to not only get your through Fell and Flame through Fell and Flame with ETC basically just means you have a 4 mana 5/5 rush on demand if you don't ever need to greed for other options. But you can also just take a Kobold Miner. So Bran will give you, if you play ETC after Bran, you get your Kobold Miner, which then also doubles, plus whatever other card. So for me, I put Fell and Flame and Trial by Fire in there. If you want to, double up on a different battle cry, a Badlands Brawler, for example, I wouldn't fault you. But I'm really excited for this deck, honestly. I think Azerite Ox is just insane after Bran. And then, if you look at a 7 cost slot, you play a 2/4, you're not feeling too good. But then you follow it up by Trial by Fire, Badlands Brawler, General Vezex. So General Vezex is going to be able to swing 3 times after a brand. So a lot of powerful follow-ups into that Reno as well. So if you can survive that turn after Bran, I feel like this deck is just going to run away with the game. The biggest thing I wanted to do is just make sure that I'm not losing the game when I don't draw the Bran. And I think that's going to be the most, I guess, the most fun for people to figure out when they're deck building is how greedy do you want to get to where you're not just losing the game if you don't draw the brand, or if you're not losing the game if you can't stabilize after playing a 2/4, uh, or you can't afford to do it because they'll just kill you that turn if you end up playing a 2/4, right? One last thing, Astalor and School Teacher, both really good off of brand. A whole lot of damage off of Astalor and a whole lot of mana cheat with School Teacher and Greedy Partner in there just to be able to cheat out Bran or Reno as quickly as possible. And then I figured, why not do a Black Rock and Roll Bran deck? Should be kind of funny to double up. So the dream is you go Black Rock and Roll, Bran, Lorth Martheron, and then your whole deck is what? It's quadrupled after Black Rock and Roll, which is pretty funny. Um, Yeah, I just tossed in Bone Lord for fun uh, to be able to just manage heat as much as possible after a brand. after a Bran or a Black Rock and Roll, Lord Martheron. Um, this deck is very slow. Like I said, you can go Black Rock and Roll into Bran, into Lord Martheron, but that's a zero slots, a 2/4 on 6, and 7/7 on 7. You're not gonna do too well, but the good thing is you have so many follow-ups. There's a lot of 6 and 7 drops, and then Reno that can help you out. And I love that Reno then curves into Trench Stalker, and then the brand doubles up on the Trench Stalker attack, so your Trench Stalker hits face twice, basically. Really cool. A lot of kind of fun synergies. You're definitely gonna die early a lot of the time, um, but I just think it's gonna be pretty fun to try and work every once in a while. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Oh, one last thing. One Menagerie Band, uh, one Amalgam Band, I should say, pretty good off of brand. You know, a lot of these cards have tribes, and then you double up on it, so you're pretty much always going to get all your keywords. And Tram Operators while drawing Ziliax and one Amalgam Band should be pretty fun. But yeah, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this mini set. Some classes kind of got left in the wind. Death Knight. What else? Death Knight Mage, Demon Hunter, Rogue. Just not really excited for those classes. Priest. Yeah, not really excited for those classes, but I am looking forward to the ones that I did mention, and figuring out which cards I overrated, which cards I underrated. So thanks for listening, and I appreciate you guys as always listening to what I have to say. But yeah, peace out. Appreciate your time. If I can get it to close. There you go. See ya.